Welcome back to Hidden Science. It's great to have you here again, and thanks for spending your time on this episode. Today, we're reopening one of the most puzzling mysteries in modern history: the Dyatlov Pass Incident of 1959. 9 experienced hikers fled their tent in freezing darkness and never returned. For decades, people have argued about avalanches, military tests, strange injuries, and unexplained behavior. In this episode, we're going to focus on what science can actually show and how new research is changing the way we understand the case. In early 1959, a group of 9 skilled hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out on a winter expedition into the remote northern Ural Mountains. Their goal was to reach Otorten, a peak known for harsh weather and difficult terrain. This was not a beginner's route. Everyone in the group had solid experience with long-distance skiing, cold weather travel, and wilderness survival. When the team failed to return on schedule, a search mission was launched. What rescuers found quickly turned the missing person search into a mystery that has lasted more than 60 years. Their tent was discovered abandoned on a snowy slope, cut open from the inside. Footprints led away from the campsite. The tracks showed that several members left with no boots, wearing only socks or light clothing. Temperatures at the time were around 30 deg. Over the next weeks, search teams found the hikers' bodies at different distances from the tent. Some appeared to have died from cold exposure. Others had severe injuries that didn't match simple falls. 1 had a fractured skull. 2 had crushed ribs. Soft tissues were missing from a few bodies. The mixture of mild and extreme injuries created questions that investigators struggled to answer. For decades, explanations ranged from avalanches and katabatic winds to military tests, infrasound effects, and psychological stress. The case became a magnet for speculation because official reports were incomplete and some details were released late or inconsistently. Today, scientists are revisiting the Dyatlov Pass incident using updated tools. Avalanche simulations, weather reconstruction models, forensic reviews, and new interpretations of the hikers' photos all help cut through the myths. This episode focuses on what those tools reveal and how they reshape our understanding of what might have happened that night. The Dyatlov Pass incident has produced thousands of explanations, but most of them raise more questions than answers. When you strip away the speculation, one simple question remains. What could force 9 experienced hikers to cut their own tent and walk into 30-degree Sikhi darkness, leaving behind clothing, boots, and gear they needed to survive? This episode approaches that question through evidence and scientific models, not rumors or dramatic theories. We want to understand which physical forces, environmental conditions, and human reactions could realistically lead to the injuries, locations, and timelines documented in the case files. Modern avalanche simulations, atmospheric research, and updated forensic reviews offer new insight that wasn't available in 1959. With these tools, we can evaluate each major theory using real-world physics. Our goal is clear: identify which explanations fit the evidence and which ones simply don't. The Dyatlov group began their expedition on January 23, 1959. Led by Igor Dyatlov, the team consisted of 9 experienced hikers, most of them in their early 20s. They traveled by train, truck, and then skis as they moved deeper into the northern Ural Mountains. Their plan was simple: reach Otorten and return to the town of Vizhai. They kept a diary and took photos throughout the journey, documenting each step. The first days went smoothly. They set up camps, crossed rivers, and moved through forested areas with normal winter challenges. On February 1st, the group reached the base of Kholat Shakal. Weather conditions became harsher, with strong winds and limited visibility. Instead of completing a turn into a sheltered valley, they stopped and pitched their tent on the eastern slope of the mountain. It was a risky location, but not impossible for experienced hikers. This moment is the last confirmed point in the timeline where all 9 hikers were alive and together. When the group missed their planned return date, search teams were organized. On February 26th, rescuers found the tent. It was partially collapsed and covered in snow. The most alarming detail was that the tent had been cut open from the inside. All their gear, clothing, and shoes were still inside, as if they left in a hurry. Footprints in the snow showed at least 8 people walking downhill. The prints were clear enough to show that some hikers wore socks, some wore a single boot, and some walked barefoot. The tracks eventually faded as the terrain changed. The first 2 bodies were found near the edge of the forest, close to a small cedar tree. They were dressed lightly and had signs of cold exposure. 3 more bodies were discovered between the cedar and the tent, as if they were trying to return. Weeks later, search teams found the remaining 4 bodies in a ravine. These 4 had the most severe injuries: chest fractures, skull damage, and missing soft tissue. Snow depth and freezing temperatures had preserved the scene, but made interpretation difficult. This timeline forms the backbone of the entire investigation, and every theory must align with these events. Since the 1959 investigation left major gaps, many theories emerged to explain what happened at Dyatlov Pass. Some are grounded in realistic hazards. Others became popular, simply because the details were confusing and inconsistent. Here are the most discussed explanations that shaped public understanding of the case. The first and most common theory is an avalanche. Supporters argue that a sudden slab of snow pushed the tent, causing the hikers to cut it open and escape. This idea explains the rushed exit, but critics note the slope angle was low, and early reports said there were no clear avalanche signs. A second theory involves katabatic winds, powerful wind bursts that can create dangerous pressure changes, intense noise, and blowing snow. In extreme cases, these winds can overwhelm experienced hikers and force them to evacuate quickly. The military test theory suggests the group accidentally entered an area where secret weapons or parachute mines were being tested. Some people point to unexplained injuries, strange skin discoloration, and a few references to military activity in the region. However, nothing directly connects the hikers to a specific event. Another theory focuses on infrasound, which comes from wind interacting with the mountain shape. Low-frequency vibrations can cause panic, disorientation, and a sense of dread. If the hikers experienced this effect, they might have left the tent in a confused state without clear judgment. There is also the idea of paradoxical undressing, a known hypothermia symptom where people remove clothing because they feel overheated. This may explain why some hikers were lightly dressed, but it doesn't explain the severe injuries found on several bodies. Less scientific but widely circulated are the wild animal attack and Yeti or supernatural theories. These gained traction mainly because the case became an internet phenomenon. However, the evidence doesn't support large animal tracks, claw marks, or signs of predation. These popular theories show how the incident became more than a tragedy. It became a cultural mystery. But to move forward, we need to evaluate each explanation using clear evidence, not speculation. That's where modern analysis changes the conversation. To understand the Dyatlov Pass incident without leaning on speculation, we need to focus on the evidence recorded in 1959 and re-examined in later decades. These details create the framework that any valid explanation must fit. The first major piece of evidence is the tent itself. Investigators confirmed that the cuts on the tent were made from the inside. This detail strongly suggests the hikers left voluntarily but in a rush. The tent still contained boots, warm clothing, food supplies, and even a working flashlight left on top of the snow. Nothing indicates an attack or a struggle inside. Next are the footprints found leading downhill. The prints came from multiple hikers and showed no signs of running or dragging. They appeared controlled, as if the group was walking deliberately. Yet several sets of prints showed bare feet or only socks. This points to a decision made under stress or confusion, not a fully planned evacuation. The autopsy reports are some of the most debated pieces of evidence. Several hikers died of hypothermia, which matches the conditions. But others had injuries described as similar to trauma from a car crash. One had a major skull fracture. Two had severe chest damage. In 3 cases, soft tissue was missing, including parts of the lips and eyes. There were no signs of defensive wounds, no deep cuts, and no evidence of animal attacks. The fractures were internal, with no external bruising, which is unusual. Another important source is the camera film recovered from the scene. The photos show the group in good spirits during the trip, along with images of strong winds and heavy snowfall near the final campsite. Nothing in the photos suggests conflict or panic before the final night. Then there is the weather data, reconstructed decades later. Models show strong winds, negative temperatures below 30 during week, and a pattern that matches conditions for small snow slab formation. These reconstructions didn't exist during the original investigation. Finally, the Soviet-era documents add context but leave major gaps. Some records mention military tests in the region, but none connect directly to the hikers. The official case was closed with a vague statement: a compelling natural force. When all of this is combined, tent damage, footprints, injuries, photographs, and weather models, it becomes clear that any explanation must match a very specific set of physical conditions. Modern science now provides tools that help us test which theories actually fit those conditions. Modern research has reshaped the Dyatlov Pass discussion by giving us tools that didn't exist in 1959. Instead of relying on rumors or dramatic theories, scientists now use physics models, forensic reviews, and updated weather reconstructions to test what could realistically happen on a snowy mountain slope in the Urals. One of the biggest breakthroughs came from an unexpected place: the Disney Animation Research Team. Their work on realistic snow behavior for Frozen helped inspire an avalanche simulation used by researchers studying Dyatlov Pass. The model showed that even a small, slow-moving slab avalanche could create strong enough force to injure people lying flat inside a tent. These injuries could match some of the chest and skull fractures found in the autopsies. This doesn't prove an avalanche happened, but it makes the physics more plausible than many believed for years. Another major area of study is katabatic wind, a powerful downward wind that can strike suddenly. These winds can push snow into dangerous shapes, overwhelm visibility, and cause intense noise. In extreme conditions, they can make staying inside a tent difficult or unsafe. Katabatic winds could explain why the hikers left quickly, cut through the tent, and moved as a group. There is also the idea of infrasound, low-frequency vibration that can come from wind interacting with mountain terrain. Some researchers believe that this vibration can create anxiety, confusion, and panic. While infrasound alone doesn't explain the injuries, it could contribute to the group's fast exit from the tent if they experienced a sudden sense of danger. A more grounded scientific area is hypothermia progression. As body temperature drops, judgment weakens, and coordination declines. Confusion, poor decision-making, and paradoxical undressing become possible. This could explain why some hikers were lightly dressed or separated from the group. Finally, modern forensic experts re-examined the injury patterns. They concluded that some trauma could occur if people fell into the ravine where 4 bodies were found. Snow pressure and impact with hard surfaces could produce internal injuries without obvious external damage. Each of these scientific angles, snow physics, wind behavior, infrasound, hypothermia, and updated forensics, doesn't solve the mystery on its own. But when combined, they create a more realistic picture of what the group faced that night. One of the strongest modern explanations is the small slab avalanche model. This idea doesn't describe the large, dramatic avalanches seen in documentaries. Instead, it focuses on a compact block of snow that can shift suddenly on a slope, even a slope that looks too gentle for a classic avalanche. Recent simulations showed that the Dyatlov group dug into the snow to level a spot for their tent. By doing this, they may have unintentionally weakened the snowpack. Combined with strong winds and fresh snowfall, a slab of snow could have detached later that night. Even a slow-moving slab can create dangerous force when it hits people lying inside a tent. This model helps explain several details in the case. First, it fits the rushed exit and the cuts from inside the tent. If part of the tent was pushed in by snow, the hikers would need to get out quickly. Cutting the tent would be faster than trying to crawl through the entrance while panicking in darkness. It also explains the pattern of injuries on the hikers found in the ravine. The chest fractures and skull damage can be produced by heavy pressure from snow pushing a person into a hard surface. Importantly, these injuries can happen without major external bruising, which matches the autopsy records. What this model doesn't fully explain is why the group traveled so far from the tent, or why they separated. It also doesn't explain the missing soft tissue on some bodies, which likely came from natural decomposition under snow and water. Still, the slab avalanche model remains one of the most scientifically grounded explanations because it aligns with weather data, terrain conditions, and the injury patterns seen in the official reports. A second explanation considers the event not as a single trigger, but as a chain reaction of environmental stress and psychological pressure. In this model, multiple natural factors stacked together until the hikers reached a point where fast, imperfect decisions were almost guaranteed. The night of February 1st included strong winds, blowing snow, and temperatures near 30 degrees. If katabatic winds began pushing down the slope, the tent could have shaken violently, creating loud noise and pressure changes. Inside a dark tent, this would feel threatening, especially if the snowpack around them started to shift or compress. Even without a full avalanche, a partial collapse could cause fear of being buried. In that moment, the hikers may have chosen the fastest escape route, cutting through the tent. This immediate action fits the evidence and doesn't require a single catastrophic event. Once outside, the situation becomes worse. Visibility drops, cold stress rises, and judgment declines quickly. The group moves toward the forest because it offers shelter from wind and a place to build a fire. As they descend, hypothermia begins affecting both awareness and coordination. Disorientation becomes likely. This model also fits why the group split up. A common outcome in extreme cold. Some tried to return to the tent. Others stayed near the fire. And the 4 who fell into the ravine may have been moving in near zero visibility on uneven terrain. The severe injuries of those in the ravine can be explained by the fall and snow pressure. Missing soft tissues match natural decomposition in wet, frozen conditions. Rather than relying on one perfect explanation, this chain reaction model argues that the hikers faced multiple stressors that built up until survival decisions became chaotic. The Dyatlov Pass Incident didn't stay a quiet historical case. It grew into a global mystery because pop culture amplified the most dramatic angles and pushed scientific explanations into the background. In the 1990s and early 2000s, the case appeared in documentaries, books, and early internet forums. Many of these sources focused heavily on the unexplained injuries, the missing soft tissue, and the strange behavior of the hikers. Without context, these details sounded supernatural or suspicious, which encouraged theories involving secret weapons, strange creatures, or government cover-ups. Movies and TV shows later strengthened these ideas. Some productions portrayed the hikers being chased, attacked, or exposed to experimental weapons. These versions were designed for entertainment, not clarity, but they shaped public imagination. Even popular video games reference Dyatlov Pass, using it as a symbol of unexplained danger in remote places. Social media then gave the case a new life. Short posts and dramatic thumbnails often highlight the tent being cut from the inside, the crushed ribs, and the missing eyes. When these details are removed from scientific context, they appear far more mysterious than they actually are. Algorithms tend to reward the most intense theories, not the most accurate ones. All of this creates a challenge. Pop culture keeps the story alive, but often distorts it. Many people now know the Dyatlov Pass as a supernatural puzzle rather than a complex outdoor tragedy shaped by weather, terrain, and human decision-making under stress. This episode aims to separate that entertainment layer from the parts of the story grounded in real evidence. Even with modern tools and improved research, several details in the Dyatlov Pass case remain hard to explain with complete confidence. These unresolved points are small on their own, but together they keep the mystery open. One challenge is the exact timeline of events after the hikers left the tent. We know the order in which bodies were found, but not the specific sequence of their decisions during the night. Cold, darkness, and wind erase those clues. Another unresolved detail involves the injuries of the 4 hikers found in the ravine. While a fall and heavy snow pressure explain most of the trauma, the precise mechanics of how each fracture happened can't be reconstructed perfectly. The soft tissue loss, such as missing eyes and parts of the mouth, matches natural decomposition in snowmelt, but the exact timing is unknown because the bodies were discovered weeks later. Finally, the reason the group chose that exposed slope for their campsite remains debated. Some say it was a navigational error. Others believe it was intentional. These gaps leave room for interpretation, even with strong scientific models. When we bring together all the evidence, a clearer picture starts to form. The tent cuts, the controlled footprints, the injuries, and the weather data don't point to a single dramatic cause. Instead, they point to a night shaped by harsh conditions, limited visibility, and decisions made under intense cold and stress. The scientific models show how a small snow shift, strong winds, and disorientation could combine into a dangerous situation faster than anyone expects. The hikers were skilled, but even experienced people can make urgent choices when they feel immediate risk. What stands out after reviewing the full timeline is not a supernatural event or a hidden military secret. It's the chain of natural forces working together at the worst possible moment. Before we reach the final answer, it's important to keep this in mind. The Dyatlov Pass mystery may look impossible from a distance, but many of its details make more sense when viewed through updated science. When we look at everything together, the Dyatlov Pass incident becomes less of an unsolvable mystery and more of a severe outdoor emergency built from several natural factors. A small slab of shifting snow could have pushed into the tent. Strong winds and noise could have made the group feel unsafe staying inside. Cutting the tent and moving downhill would have been a quick response in the dark. Once exposed to 30°C wind, hypothermia and confusion begin fast. The group likely tried to reach the tree line, built a fire, and then separated as their physical and mental condition declined. The 4 hikers who fell into the ravine likely suffered their injuries from the impact and snow pressure, while the missing soft tissue came from natural decomposition in water and melting snow. This explanation doesn't answer every detail perfectly, but it fits more of the evidence than dramatic theories. It shows how extreme weather, low visibility, and cold can overwhelm even experienced hikers. The Dyatlov Pass story reminds us that nature doesn't need anything supernatural to be dangerous. Sometimes a combination of small events can create deadly conditions, and modern science is helping us understand how that night likely unfolded. Thanks for watching this episode of Hidden Science. If you found this breakdown helpful, feel free to hit like. It helps the channel grow. And if you want more science-focused explanations of famous mysteries, you can subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. I'd also like to hear your thoughts. Which unexplained case should we explore next? Drop your suggestion in the comments, and we'll take a look at it for a future episode.